Well, here's today's project down in the lair. This water heater's been leaking. This is a separate issue, but that's another reason to replace it. But that's the cold water line. It's the cold water and the hot water line. They both come straight in. I think this has been leaking for years, and it's just totally rusted. The coating's flaking off the top of the tank and all that. It's just not ideal. But the bigger problem is that down here, this is the lower heating element. Right there, that's the lower thermostat here. See, there's a temperature adjuster on there, and then the wires going into the heating element. Here's the upper one. There's nothing wrong with the upper one, but the lower one has been leaking. And all this insulation down here is all wet. And you can see where it was dripping rusty water. So that's got to come out. So we got a new one from Home Depot. Oh, kind of the mid-range one. Fairly nice though. I'm gonna move the new one over into this corner so that it's just takes up the least amount of space possible. And I would like to make this piping here look a little bit nicer. I don't know, just having it come straight into the water heater looks sort of odd to me. And then all that space above it is, I don't know. I might still end up doing the same thing just because it'd be a lot less piping to just bring it straight down from those pipes into the water heater here. But I don't know. I want to make it look at least a little bit more straight and clean than it is now. Just bugs my OCD, such as it is. Well, first we gotta cut the power of the water heater. So I haven't turned anything off yet. This is my non-contact voltage tester. So this will light up when it detects live wires. So it blinks every couple of seconds to let you know it's still working. So we'll come over here through the lair. Over to the electrical panel. Hot water. Turn that on. Scintillating stuff, huh? And nothing. It's just doing the status blink, but it's not detecting anything. So we should be good there. And since we're gonna have to relocate the electric, or we really should, just to make it look a little cleaner, took off the 3 little clamps that were on there. One was here, and there are 2 more like that up there. Took those off, opened up the disconnect panel here. You can see this is this orange jacketed cable has a white and a black and a ground coming out of it. The ground is the copper colored wire that goes into this ground block. So this is tied together with that green wire that goes down here into this box, which isn't important. And then the 2 wires that come out of here down to that box tie in here. So these 2 are tied together and these 2 are tied together. We got to get this whole box off the wall, so I unscrewed the bottom mounting bolt that was in this hole here. This is super cheesy. You know, this, if they had to take up extra length off of this bolt, otherwise it would go through this plywood, hit the block wall, and it wouldn't bottom out enough to hold this panel in place, which you can see is the case here. Just amateur hour stuff. So I'm gonna take that other screw out, pull this box off the wall. Now that this is unscrewed from this plywood board, you can see that this wasn't even really attached to the wall hardly at all. Take this screw out here. see here, these are the 3 holes where those 3 screws that were holding this panel, you know, this screw, and this screw to the board going into the wall. It looks like somebody, in order to make the screws actually catch on something, just jammed little wood strips or something into the wall. Never seen that before. That seems pretty cheesy. I don't even know what those are. It looks like wood, but it's real crappy wood, if that's the case. It's jammed in there. Well, in any case. All right, we've got this box disconnected from this box. This is Bright Ridge on it. Bright Ridge is the power company. See this piece of conduit with wire coming out of it is what used to be connected to this. What this is a, what do they call it? A take a load off device. And basically, during periods of high load on the power grid, the power company will shut your water heater off to free up electrical capacity for the rest of the grid. Well, it's not really ideal to allow the power company to just turn your hot water off whenever they want to. And the way that they get people to install these is they say, oh, well, if you're replacing your water heater, if you allow us to install one of these on there, we'll give you $40 once. $40. Well, the previous owner had that installed probably when this piece of junk was installed. So I'm glad they saved $40 7 years ago, but I never agreed to it. So I'm just gonna take it off completely and throw it in the corner. And if they want it back, they can come get it, but that's up to them. So we're just gonna bypass that. Just gonna move this, probably move this disconnect over here or on that wall or something like that. But I'm not really wild about that. I mean, hey, if they want to pay me, even then, I'd still probably say no. Next, we're gonna drain the old water heater, which you do by, this has been off for a while, so it shouldn't be very warm. I drained a little bit into this pan to check the water temp, and it's lukewarm, but not hot enough to damage this hose. Put a hose on the drain valve there. The cold water supply has been shut off. So it's just the hot water in the tank and any water in the red hot water lines that's gonna drain out. If you just open that valve without doing anything else, it'll kind of glug and chug. It'll take forever to drain, if it completely drains at all, because as the water drains out of the tank, air has to come in after it. So what we need to do is go up to one of the hot water fixtures. I'll probably use the one on the far side of the house. Open that up, by the kitchen sink. That way air can enter in the kitchen sink, come down the line, and the water heater can drain out this way. You can see I've got the hose run out to the just to the end of the garage slab there. Hopefully it's sloped away from the house so it's not going to backflow into the garage. So we'll open the hot water here. Predictably, nothing comes out because the water valve to the water heater is shut off. The cold water still works, obviously. Hot water valve shut off. So we'll go open the valve on the tank. There's just a screwdriver here. Open that up. And there it is, draining out of the hose here. I just have to keep an eye on this, make sure I don't flood my garage. Back up top here, you can hear air getting sucked in through the faucet. And that's where the air is coming in, going down to the water heater. So it's draining like it should. After about 77 hours of draining, it's finally dry, or at least empty down to this point here. I bet if we rocked it a little bit, it would leak a little more. Yeah. So there's going to be a little bit of water in the bottom, but that's not a big deal. It's just as long as it doesn't weigh, 300 or 400 pounds from being full of water. So at this point, we should be able to disconnect these lines and get this old one out of here. Those lines disconnected, just using a 10-inch crescent wrench. This is pretty light now, should be pretty easy to carry out. Just use a hand truck, I think. Which I have over here somewhere. Where did I put it? I'm probably standing next to it. Oh, there it is. Right there. Get this taken out. Easy peasy. Okay, so hours of thinking and pontificating and time wasting later. I've got this board mounted with Tapcon concrete / masonry screws. This is what I'm gonna mount this expansion tank to. There wasn't one on the old install, but they really should have been. What these are, they're a tank, obviously, and inside there's a rubber bladder, probably somewhere around here. And below the bladder is air that's pressurized, and above the bladder normally is water. And the reason for that is that when your water heater is heating and none of the fixtures are open, this water that's heating up and expanding has nowhere to go unless you have an expansion tank. So if you have an expansion tank, that water as it expands is pushed through the lines into the tank, which will be mounted right here. At least that's my plan. And it puts no extra stress on the rest of the pipes in the system. So that's what that's going to be for. I decided to simplify my plumbing a little bit to save actually a lot of money. These fittings are incredibly expensive. They're at least $4 a piece, all the way up to $16, $17 a piece. And there's going to be a bunch of them that have all the plumbing come down the wall here and then come out. It would have looked really choice, but I would rather spend the $80 or $90 on tacos and alcohol. So that's what we're just gonna come basically straight down from these pipes here. That's gonna be the plan. It'll be at least a little bit more out of the way than the old install was, just because it's in the corner. But yeah, I'm gonna get that expansion tank mounted up, and then we're gonna do the cold line first, because that's the most important to get done first, because I gotta shut the water off to the whole house to get that cold water line done. Once that's done, I'll have a shut-off valve on the cold line that I can turn off, and then I can work on this valve here. That's the reason I was able to take the other tank out without shutting the water off to the house. Once I have the cold water in, I can work on the hot water at my leisure without worrying about upsetting anybody else, meaning my wife. All right, we got our thread sealing on there. I'm going new school and trying out some liquid pipe dope this time. Made sure that this is used on lines carrying potable water, hot or cold. So we should be good to use this here. Basically, I'm hoping this will be a little more foolproof than just regular, Teflon tape, because I just really don't want any leaks over here. Like sprinklers and stuff like that, who cares? But I don't want it to flood the basement. And there's the expansion tank mounted up. I need to trim this excess off of these band clamps or something to figure out what to do with it. Here it is, it's just screwed into that board. And these are just band clamps on there. It's not quite even, it's okay. So I need to put an adapter on the top here so that this can be adapted to the plastic piping connector. So we'll go ahead and do that. I've hit a bit of a snafu here. It was a horse's ass, and I bought 3 of these adapters, thinking, well, I'm gonna need at least 2, so I might as well get 1 more. Well, that's not gonna do me much good. I should have bought one with female threads on the bottom here. So I'm gonna have to buy one tomorrow. Oh well. So I guess what we'll do tonight then is just do the hot water line. The water heater won't get turned on, but we can at least get the hot water situated, and then maybe get the electric connected but not turned on, because you can't turn these on until they're full water, like no air in them at all. So I don't know, that's what we'll do now. Now we got our pipe dope on the hot fitting. We've got our hot line rearranged a little bit here. Then I gotta prepare one of our copper fittings here. Plumbing code or mechanical code or whatever says that you got to have at least 18 inches of copper or stainless steel pipe between your water heater and plastic piping. Normally that's a big deal on gas water heaters when you have the exhaust stack right here, because if that stack gets plugged up, those gases can't escape up the stack from burning natural gas, and those fumes come out this way and they'll melt the plastic, and then you have big problems. So anyway, I'm gonna have, made a mess there, didn't I? One end here, and then we're gonna have one of those fittings that I did buy correctly on the other end here, and then we'll just bring the plastic right down to that. Alrighty, so there's the hot water line. It's still a little bit jankier than I wanted it to be. I might move that top clamp over an inch or two to make that straighter, but you can get the gist of it. I put these bend guides on the red pipe rather than using elbows, because the flow will be smoother through there. Plus it's less crimping. And then there's just a straight coupling to connect these two pieces here. And then this is crimped onto that adapter there. And that's it for the hot. Yeah, I moved that clamp over a little bit and then added a second one so it won't twist. So it's not perfect, but you know, it's plastic pipe, so it's never gonna be perfectly straight. But it looks pretty decent. So here's the cover removed off the water heater. Here's that disconnect that we were looking at earlier. I'm gonna mount this right about in here. I'm gonna change this conduit piece out. It's too long. I'm gonna use that one. I'm gonna have an elbow coming out of the top just like the other one. And it's gonna go from an elbow there, probably up into the bottom, I would think. So I'm gonna mount this, choose the mounting height once I figure out. I'm gonna get the conduit attached, this little conduit elbow, that gray thing attached onto there. Get that piece of conduit attached on there and see where that puts us as far as the other end of that conduit piece. So then I can adjust this up and down. So here's the conduit attached to the box. Like I was saying, I got the elbow on this plate here. I pulled these are 10 gauge wires through there. This is 30 amp circuit, so you're gonna need to use 10 gauge. The ding-a-lings from the power company or whoever that installed the little auto shut-off thing used 12 gauge, so we're lucky we didn't have a fire or something. But anyway, just gonna get these wire netted together, match the colors, basically. Put the green one, this is the ground wire. You're gonna pull that back through the top. See how there's a little bubble there for the wire to come through, and we'll clamp it down there with the ground nut, ground screw. When you wire nut these together, you just line the wires up next to each other. Sorry, this is some awful cinematography. And then you take this wire nut and you put it over the two wires and you just twist it together until it's just about as tight as you can get it by hand. When you're connecting stranded wire like the top wire is to solid wire like the bottom wire is, when the jackets, insulation jackets, are lined up on the right like that, you want there to be about a 1/16 of an inch stick out of the stranded over the solid. Just a note. On the ground wire here, if I can get it to focus, maybe. Come on. Well, in any case, yeah, the end of the wire is kind of silver. I had to tin it, which just means getting some solder on the end of that wire. Because I don't have a solid 10 gauge wire, I just tinned the end of the wire, which keeps the strands together. Basically, it turns them into a more or less solid wire, for lack of a better term. That way I can actually screw it onto the plate, which I seem to have misplaced. Anyway, it'll be a lot easier to get a screw to hold down on that. Otherwise, the strands all kind of spread apart when the screw clamps down on them. There we go. Got the ground screw on there. See how the strands didn't spread apart? Perfect. Alrighty, so we got the wire connections made on the water heater side. There's 3 wires run through this conduit, come out here, black, red, green. Green is the ground. That goes into this grounding bar here. That'll be connected to the ground wire in this orange cable. You can see the orange cable runs up and back across the basement over to the main panel. So then you got the black and the red. Those are the both legs of the 240 volt power. And then correspondingly you have a black and a white. Somebody put a piece of black electrical tape over the white to let you know that this is not a neutral wire. Whites are usually neutral, so if you use them as a power wire or a hot wire, you gotta indicate that somehow, usually by putting a piece of black tape around it. So but in effect, these are both blacks. So you put a black here and then the white here. And here's the box all wired up. So you can see orange cable here, that's the supply. You got the black going to here. You got the white, the corresponding black marking going to here. And then the black and the red here come down to there. And again, those go out to the water heater. You got the bonding cord, the bonding wire here, the bonding wire here. This one goes to the breaker panel. This one goes to the water heater. They're bonded here, which also bonds this panel. So if any of these conductors were to fall out or otherwise somehow contact the panel here or the inside of the water heater, that current will flow through the ground wire back to the panel and trip the breaker. Otherwise you would touch this and psst, get zapped, or touch this, psst, get zapped. So there you go, wiring's done. Just need to finish up, do the cold water piping tomorrow and clean this up, and we'll be done. All right, we're back. It's the next day here. One other thing I forgot that I gotta do is I gotta connect the piping for this pressure temperature relief valve up on top here. It's gonna come out the back and then down into that pan. The valve, what it does is if the pressure or the temperature in the tank get high enough that it's in danger of rupturing or otherwise hurting somebody, that valve will open and then the discharge goes out and back. A lot of water heaters have them on the side, like the old one was on the side. So all you would need is just a straight piece of pipe. This is from the old one, and it would just sit like that. But that's obviously not gonna work on this one. So I got the white pipe there is CPVC. Tennessee uses 2012 IPC, International Plumbing Code, which permits the use of CPVC as relief valve piping. So that's what we're going to use. You can buy little prefabricated kits. The one for this water heater, obviously it's like a big L shape, and when you tighten it on there, that L would be spinning around this way as you tighten it. Obviously there's no way I could get it in there now. I would have had to put it on before I got this far in the install, and I really don't feel like taking it back away and undoing all this stuff to put that on, so I'm just going to make my own pipe, discharge pipe I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. Shouldn't take very long. Here's the first part installed there. It's a CPVC to I think that's stainless steel threaded adapter. This is one piece. It looks like two pieces, but they're fused together. It's a factory created joint. So that's how you would transition from this female thread to this slip female on CPVC. So we'll glue the rest of it. This is a big old bushing, that stainless silver looking thing there. I had to bust out old Magnus, the 12-inch crescent wrench. Biggest fitting of the project so far. So we got the CPVC pipe piece cut here. Let's see how it fits down in the under the lip of the pan there. So if the valve blows off, the discharge is below the sidewall of the pan. So now we just got to figure out what this piece needs to be, and we can glue everything up. So here's how this will be. I have the markings on the pipe facing up and left so that any future homeowners or plumbers or whoever can see that this pipe is in fact rated for this application. So I'm going to glue here and here, and then I'll glue this one on here as the final point of connection, and that way I can get all this glued on and fit onto the water heater without having to move the heater itself. Another thing I forgot that I have to do is I got to charge the air bladder in the expansion tank. You'll remember I was saying that this is a tank with a rubber diaphragm in it, and there's air under the diaphragm, and normally there's water up above it. And the air pressure below the diaphragm has to be charged to a certain pressure, which should match your incoming water pressure to the house from the city or from your well or whatever. So that thing up there is the water pressure regulator. It's set to 60 psi, so we got to use a bike pump to charge that little tank up to 60 psi, and then we can move on with life. Really should have done it when it was on the ground, but this will work, or I'll just hold it against the wall and push in with my chest to pump it up. And there we go. 60 on the money. Alrighty, I've got the main shutoff valve turned off there, and I've opened this valve and drained what is hopefully all of the water in the cold lines. So now we can cut that T out. We're going to run a new piece of pipe from that upper T here over to here, put an ET in, and bring it down into our cold water line here. All right, so here's what we have so far. You can see I changed my mind a little bit, and that bend support there is new, so that way there were a couple of elbows in there before. It came over and then it went up and then back. This is a lot more, it eliminates both of those elbows, and that clean sweep will be a lot better for flow and pressure loss and all that. And that's the new T there. So this existing pipe that's lighter blue, we're going to cut it right about there and crimp it onto there, and then bring the cold water line down to here. So at this point, I'm going to start working up from the bottom so that we can kind of meet right where we need to. So we're going to add our adapter fitting onto this fitting here. So that'll have a little barb on it for the plastic pipe to attach to. That'll come up, go to a T, which will go back and over into the expansion tank, up from the T into the shutoff valve, and then from the valve up to the supply line. Actually, I misspoke. We got to have this copper deal on there. And then we'll have the adapter on here, and then the T, and then the valve, and then up. So here's the expansion tank plumbing there. So now we just got to get the valve on there and connect it. And now, got the valve in. Got our nice matching bend support in there, elbow in there, and up into the T. As you can see now, water comes into the house through that shutoff valve, through the pressure regulator, through that elbow, through that bend there, through that T, down, through that elbow, through that bend support, through that valve, tees off below the valve, into the expansion tank, and then the water heater heats up, comes out the hot, through there, and then to the rest of the house. So at this point, I think all I really got to do is clean up and try it out. Hey, pro tip, don't forget to actually clamp all of your, or crimp all your clamps before you turn the freaking water back on. Otherwise, you'll make a nice little lake in your basement. Yeah, I turned the main on, and it was spewing out of here, and I thought, oh geez, I screwed up the connection, or this elbow's bad or something. Nope, I just hadn't crimped that. It's done. Well, try it now. So far, so good. Hee hee. Hey. Now I'm gonna go open all the cold taps, let the air out. done, we can open the water to the tank. Now, since the hot water lines are all empty, I'm gonna have to go back up and open up all the hot water faucets, bleed the air out of those while this fills up. At this point, we've got water coming out of all these fixtures. Got the hot water valves turned on. So that means that the air has been purged out of the tank. So again, we've got water flowing through the tank and back out the top, which means that we've purged all the air out of the tank. It's very, very important that you are totally sure that the tank is completely full of water before you connect it to electrical power. Otherwise, those heating elements in there, they'll turn on, they'll get hot, but there won't be any water to take the heat out of the element. So the elements will overheat and you'll destroy your water heater and they won't cover it by any warranty. But luckily, that's not the case for us. So we'll put our disconnect back in here. It's a little feisty. So that's in there. And we just gotta turn the breaker on. So you can see here, we've got power to the heater. Go ahead, it's 115, 120. We'll just set it to 120, see how that works. So at this point, it should be heating the water. Check back in a little bit and make sure it's actually working. But so far, I don't see any leaks. It seemed to be good. I'd say it's a success so far. Now Teddy's gonna help me see if there's hot water coming out. It's gonna be cold until the hot water catches up. It makes its way through the pipes, warming up. Yep. Nice and warm. Getting hotter. Hotter. Alright, that's pretty damn hot. Well, great success.